We're back again. We're here to talk tight ends. It's Nick and Ben. I rapped as far as I could. I was hoping you would come in and save the day. You could have at least threw your chain around and caught it, but you don't have one. I'm supposing you left that at Queen Latifah's last night. We'll get into that a little bit later. We are here to talk about tight ends. No, not her tight end. We're here to talk about professional football tight ends. This has been a very spirited start to the show today, right?
It really has. I have no segue into, we figure out we'll start off by, talking of the top three tight ends and see where they rank. I can't go from Queen Latifah to Rob Gronkowski, Travis Kelce, or Jordan Reed.
Well, I can. I'll tell you what. Here's something that I can honestly say. I've never owned Rob Gronkowski.
Really? Are you saying that for you, Rob Gronkowski is on his last holiday?
No, I'm just saying that I've never actually had him in one of my fantasy leagues. The price has always been too high. This year it started off where you were getting him, if you had the first round pick, you were getting him at that 2-3 turn. It's gone up, so you're not doing that anymore. But I don't mind it. I mean, he's good. And one thing I'm starting to soften on a lot is you can't really look at... So what is a more likely situation to take place? A guy gets injured or a guy doesn't get injured? True. I mean, in the collective thing, if you looked at every player, there's going to be like a 90 to 10% chance of injury versus not injury. So some guys seem more likely to pick up injuries like Gronk, but unless he's missing week 15 in my championship, or in the playoffs rather, he can miss week 1, 4, and 6. That's fine. I don't care. I'll get someone else to fill in. The point being, if you've drafted well enough, your other guys could pick up the slack if you have to go pick up somebody like a Julius Thomas. So for me, Gronk, uber alles, he's number one, and I don't think the gap is even close. The closest gap comes from 2 to 4. Travis Kelce, Jordan Reed, Greg Olsen. They're all interchangeable.
I would agree. Jordan Reed seems to be a touchdown machine, so I might put Reed at number 2. Kelce, people are going to make the argument that Macklin's gone, but Macklin wasn't very effective, especially towards the end last year. I think Greg Olsen, you know what you're going to get with Greg Olsen. My worry is he's getting a little bit older. He's not, he's not Antonio Gates old, but he is getting a little bit older. The hype train apparently is fully in force. We've got Hunter Henry at number 5.
That's not the hype train. That's me. Nobody has him like that. I'm telling you right now. That's me. Let's talk Kelce real quick. Kelce is the Jarvis Landry of tight ends. This dude will catch 70 passes for 1,000 yards and 1 touchdown. That's just somehow what happens. So, again, I'm a little more aggressive saying, well, he's a tight end. He's not going to just not catch touchdowns. Eventually, he's going to catch touchdowns. So, if you're looking at someone who can come close to Gronk, I think it's Kelce. But it's not close. Let's talk Hunter Henry. I don't know why, after we've seen years of how Phillip Rivers loves to use Antonio Gates, and the fact that it's very clear that Antonio Gates is not going to be a big part of this offense, that we would immediately write off Hunter Henry and say, well, he shouldn't even be picked before, the 10th tight end. To me, that's asinine. Would not shock me if outside of Gronkowski, Hunter Henry's the top tight end at the end of the year. No shock.
When he played last year, I believe it was a 2 or 3 touchdown game because, told my girlfriend not to start him, which good job me. I think that was going to, in my opinion, that was going to be his breakout, where everybody's going to run to the waiver wire. Everybody, if he isn't picked up already, everybody's going to run and be like, okay, Hunter Henry's the guy. And I don't think that happened.
It did happen. I did that in our league.
It didn't. It did in our league, but in kind of, what's the word? In kind of friend leagues where it's not, heavy fantasy footballers. Hunter Henry wasn't as big as a pick as people would think. In leagues like ours, yes, definitely picked up, but maybe it's just the name. Hunter Hurst Henry apparently not enjoyed by the people. I actually like your 6 through 8, Jimmy Graham, Tyler Eifert, and Kyle Rudolph. I think Kyle Rudolph doesn't always get the respect he deserves, but for me, the guy at number 9 is exciting. Martellus Bennett, you've said it. Best tight end Green Bay has had. Jermichael Finley had a year, maybe 2, but back injuries and stuff screwed that up. If I have Aaron Rodgers, I'm ecstatic to get Martellus Bennett, solid option. And if I have Martellus Bennett, if I already drafted dynasty keeper or whatever, I'm excited.
Yeah.
He's going from Tom Brady to Aaron Rodgers. Not exactly a drop off.
No, and I think that a lot of people right now are a little bit tepid on him, like they're just not sure what they really want to do with him. But from my perspective, you're looking at a guy who can catch the ball. He is more of a blocking tight end. That's the only, and that's what's going to hurt Dwayne Allen. We'll get to that in a minute. That's what's going to hurt him in New England. You're going to have one guy blocking, the other guy receiving. Bennett's not going to have to deal with that too much here. My concern, and I didn't mention it in the wide receiver video because we wanted to get this done as well, my concern here is if he does well as a tight end catching touchdown passes, that's coming from somebody. And if it's coming from Jordy Nelson, which I can only imagine that's where it has to come from, then his trajectory falls 5 draft spots, maybe 10 draft spots, if you're taking all those touchdowns out of the equation. But nonetheless, do like Bennett. One guy I do not like is Zach Ertz. You know what you do with Zach Ertz? I'm going to tell you exactly. Do you want to know? This is free of cost.
Okay, because we're charging up until this point.
Don't draft Zach Ertz. Let him get drafted by someone else. They will drop him when he doesn't perform. And on Thanksgiving, you can pick him up, and he'll be great in December because that's all this guy ever does. He produces in December. The rest of the time, maybe he really likes Christmas. Like building up to Christmas, hey, I got to play football now. It's my time of the year. But the rest of the season, and you have to worry about now all the targets, all the weapons they have in Philadelphia. Just not a great situation. Plus, they still liked using Brent Selleck for whatever reason.
Which, that's kind of confusing. I agree with that, but it's just a confusing. Brent Selleck and Zach Ertz, talent-wise, takes it. The one thing I like about Zach Ertz is you can have your team name My Ball Zach Ertz, and that's really, I think, the value of Zach Ertz.
Well, just so you know, you can have your team named that without him being on your team.
That is true. They do allow that. They do allow that. I like Delaney Walker at 11 better. I like Eric Ebron better. A guy that I don't like, an unlucky number 13, is C.J. Fedorowicz, who was Brock Osweiler's BFF. Safety valve, hey, that guy's 2 yards down the field, I can throw to him. I don't know if you're going to get that with Tom Savage, who's the starter at this point anyway.
Yeah, but why wouldn't you?
I think C.J. Fedorowicz could drop. Tom Savage.
So who's he going to throw to, Ryan Griffin?
DeAndre Hopkins has talked him up. Okay. As far as Tom Savage, you've got Will Fuller.
I'm not disagreeing with you, and that's probably valid. I'm not discounting that.
Damn right. Rah.
You got one. That's 2 podcasts in a row.
The guy that, honestly, that I would switch out with My Ball Zach Ertz is Julius Thomas, for all the reasons you mentioned. I'll let you go into that, but I could see Julius Thomas being top 10. If history dictates anything, we could be back here next year talking about how Julius Thomas was a top 5.
Yeah, so with Julius Thomas, the issue is, he had the good year in Denver, which maybe he stayed 1 year after in Denver. I don't know if it was straight to the Jaguars or not, but it was with Adam Gase. It was straight to the Jaguars.
He did go straight there,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, they just couldn't figure out how to use him right. So I'm hoping the fact that he's played in a Gase system before will help him here. Tannehill has desperately wanted and needed a viable tight end. Jordan Cameron was bad, and then he dealt with several concussions in a short period of time that caused him to retire from football. Deion Sims, who was a blocking tight end, was the guy that they had to put in there. So now you're dealing with a situation where Julius Thomas, who's got a big frame, maybe not the quickest guy, but he's physical enough to get the job done. They say he can score as many as 10 touchdowns this year. I mentioned Hunter Henry at 5. Hunter Henry scored 5 or 8 touchdowns, 36 receptions, 478 yards, 8 touchdowns. That was in like half a year. So it's not inconceivable for somebody to be able to put up numbers like that. Are you going to be that upset if during the fantasy football season you're able to use him basically every other game? Not really. If he's going to put up tight end 1 numbers every other week, he probably would be able to do it every week, to be honest with you, but I just think he's being underdrafted right now. Jack Doyle, I'm still on board saying he's being overdrafted. Zach Miller, I think, is a good pick. Witten still Witten, and Njoku is going to be interesting.
Can we just say again that was a good pick by Cleveland? I know we try and build them up sometimes, but let's give them a participation trophy because that was a good pick.
Yeah.
And you could argue that it didn't feel their greatest need, but hell of a value there for where they got him at the end of the first.
Definitely.
So, Fleener Wiener, as my girlfriend would call him, in New Orleans with Cooks gone. Does that give you any excitement?
I am not touching Kobe Fleener. There's no way.
Can he touch you?
He's got a lot of money. So, honestly, I can simplify the rest of this process pretty simply here. There's like literally two other guys that I would honestly look at in this range of everybody below 20. So I'm talking the rest of the wide receivers. Evan Ingram is interesting to me because he's very capable of stretching the field, and I don't think a lot of tight ends are necessarily capable of that. He's a guy who can go way downfield, good catch radius, able to catch the ball like his prospects. I'm telling you right now, the most intriguing tight end this year is going to be Austin Seferian-Jenkins. Because while we're talking up Quincy Enunwa, while we're talking up Robbie Anderson, while we're talking up Bilal Powell and Chad Hansen, here's Austin Seferian-Jenkins, who has been incapable of staying on a team, staying on the field. You come to find out that he's been dealing with an alcohol problem. So here he is, goes and gets his life cleaned up, down 25 pounds, which is always what you want to hear. This kid was a physical freak in college. Everything sets up for him to be right there. He's playing with, presumably, Josh McCown, who made Gary Barnidge, who had never ever in his life at tight end done anything meaningful in an offensive capacity, made him a star, a Pro Bowler, I think, in 2015. Yep. There's no... you can use my strategy, draft a team, not draft a kicker, and draft Seferian-Jenkins last. And this guy, I mean, we haven't seen it, and it's so hard to evaluate guys that we really haven't seen do anything. But I'm telling you, man, this guy, I'm intrigued by where he's being drafted at and what his upside is. That's actually in our little thing here. That's actually where my cursor is on Austin Seferian-Jenkins right now. Me too. And another guy that I agree, after 20, who you're going to really take at that point? The only other guy aside from Austin Seferian-Jenkins that I might be interested in, Pitta's done. Benjamin Watson is coming back from injury. Max Williams, there was a lot of hype on him coming out. I think he could at least be in that discussion of a guy you want on your roster. I don't think he's going to be the next Todd Heap, but I do think he's a guy that you could put on your roster. I don't hate it, but I think they're dealing with a situation there, too, where they've got a lot of tight ends, because I believe Crockett Gilmore is still there. So, yeah, you've got Ben Watson, Crockett Gilmore, Max Williams. That's to me, that's just really tough to decide which one of those guys is going to have the bigger year. We've seen Ben Watson in New Orleans just look like an absolute stud at the point where he was coming from Cleveland. You remember that? He goes from Cleveland to New Orleans, and you're like, oh my goodness, like this guy, why aren't we playing him? And he's not young, and he wasn't young then either. So his breakout season was age, 30, 31? Something like that. So, yeah, I mean, again, you're talking about guys who aren't even being drafted. So your risk is minimal. If you're taking him at the end of your draft, just as a cross your fingers, like I don't know if I'd want to. I think you can take him if you have another capable tight end, and you can just say either I'm using him as a bye-week plug, or a lot of times what I do is I'm hoping I can draft a guy who does exceedingly well that I could trade to someone else and get something better in return. That's like the game of fantasy football, is trying to turn those one-week performances into consistency elsewhere. So I don't hate it. I think there's a lot of upside to that. quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, that pretty much wraps up tight ends. Is there anything else you want to put out there?
Not really. We didn't really discuss O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate, but for me, that's wait and see, and I'm not excited about either one.
No,
honestly,
I think
that may be on my no draft list.
I'm probably pushing Brate up a little and dropping Howard a little, just because I don't think the first-year wide receiver who, like I've said before, he did nothing in college football except for when they were in championship games. So he has not been a model of consistency. His offensive game isn't that good. He's a guy who could get overdrafted because of all the hype surrounding him. People equate draft and draft position, and it does make sense to an extent. They don't look at it as much as potential as much as they think it's immediate contribution. And that's not necessarily the case. I don't see O.J. Howard contributing immediately, like in a big way.
I don't either.
So, all right, that'll wrap it up for us. You can find us at researchfantasy.com. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel by clicking subscribe below here. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Research and Win. BC?
If you're on the Twitter or the Facebook, they are very popular. It is at 1SF Podcast. If you enjoy the Instagram, BC_Steele, and I'm very excited now. We're getting close to fantasy football time. I'm going to go to the beach, but before that, I'm going to reprise the theme song and roll the credits.